Thud. Extraction point reached. Equipment status report, ESR. High performance maneuverability gear, HPMG, nominal. Active camouflage, nominal. Requesting operator status. I let out a series of heavy, breathy pants, fighting my stomach's desire to appease the vertigo gods by chucking up my less than impressive breakfast, consisting of a single bite of crispy bread and a tube of NutriPaste. My whole body had all but given out, and I would have crumpled into a sorry heap of sweaty human if it wasn't for the Eevee activating the suits in armor positional reorientation mode, keeping the armor nice and rigid while I squirmed inside. To the outside observer, and most noticeably to Thalmin, I would have arrived with the flair of your typical video game protagonist, having gracefully and rather epically, might I add, landed on both armored feet, while simultaneously decloaking and retracting both the grappler and its tether. I even did the thing they taught you in training where you followed through when the grappler was fully retracted, meaning I pulled both of my arms back just as the grappler housing unit clanked shut, resulting in me inadvertently striking a pose just to cement my triumphant return. Tween and teen Emma would have loved seeing this, and would have given anything and everything to be present Emma. Present Emma, however, wanted nothing more than to die right now. Elevated heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate detected. Cadet Booker, do you require medical assistance? No, I'm fine, I managed out for a stifled hiccup. Affirmative, the Eevee replied mechanically. Then, as if nothing happened, it repeated the query from before in the exact same tone and cadence, requesting operator status. I groaned out an annoyance at that. But what was I expecting from a military VI? Some fake commercial-grade faux compassion protocols? Operator status. Nothing to report. Just some mild nausea and vertigo. Affirmative. Do you wish for me to administer anti-nausea medication, Cadet Booker? No. I'm fine. Affirmative. Terminating battlefield networking and combat maneuverability assistance runtimes. Stand by. Just like that, I found half of my HUD suddenly freed up. The various programs and subroutines that were practically carrying me through that whole side quest were suddenly terminated, their processing power being reallocated to the Eevee as the virtual intelligence took back all of its real estate with a ravenous hunger. Emma, I heard the voice of a certain wolf prince breaking through my reverie. That was just... I could hear him leading up to a compliment, a gushing one at that, if that wagging tail was any indicator. But he stopped halfway. Instead, he decided to step forward, only to punch one of my shoulder guards with his fist. You didn't need to show off, you know. He spoke for a toothy grin. There's nothing to prove and no one to prove it to, so calm down with the theatrics here, my would-be rogue, he continued, giving out a series of hefty, hearty chuckles as he did so. You're performing to an audience of one. I snickered outwardly, before responding with a healthy shrug and an unseen smirk. Where I come from, flashiness and practicality aren't mutually exclusive. But thanks for the considerate words. I'm glad to know I have a future as an entertainer or a rogue if things between the UN and the Nexus turn sour, or should my stint at the UN not pan out. The Lupinor let out a single dry chuckle at that, baring his fangs as he did so. It's good to have an exit strategy, should things indeed take a turn. Which reminds me, how did things go with the apprentice? The Lupinor's tone took a shift at this, as he transitioned from that playful banter into a more serious tone of voice. Did our gambit work out? I would probably be fulfilling my surname's namesake and be booking it out of here if things had gone south, Thalmin, I began with a bout of sly humour. Thalmin's expressions, however, didn't seem to reciprocate my attempt at a joke. I took this prompting to correct my course, as I purposely cleared my throat before continuing. In all seriousness, Thalmin, things went surprisingly well. The apprentice didn't freak out. In fact, she seemed quite receptive. More receptive than I honestly expected, but I think a lot of it has to do with what she calls a life debt. I'm not sure if that's a literal thing here in the Nexus, but given how serious she seems to be taking it, I bet it had a pretty significant impact on how she took my request, especially when you consider the unconventional way I went about getting to her in the first place.
A life debt?
Thalmin parroted back, with a severe look on his face, his snout actually wrinkling as he said that.
Did she actually use those words, Emma?
Yeah.
The apprentice?
The Lupinor paused, treading off as he seemed to be trying to find the right words.
Is proving to be more honourable of a soul than I initially gave her credit for. Life debts aren't something to be trifled with, Emma. They are as socially binding as they are honour-binding, so this is rather significant progress. Please continue.
There's nothing much more than that to our conversation, to be honest. We talked about the crate. I emphasized how big of a threat it posed, and she agreed to help. She said she'll be talking to Maltori ASAP, probably sometime tonight. I shrugged, before I realized a pretty sizable revelation that I'd all but left out. There was a pretty non-insignificant development that I wasn't really expecting from the whole exchange, though. I muttered out under a half-breath, eliciting quite a few visible twitches from the Lupinor's triangular ears. I took this as my cue to keep on going. You remember how it was pretty obvious that they were singling out that crate specifically, right? From the video logs we reviewed a few days ago?
Yeah, I do. I'm assuming she told you more about what it was that triggered that response.
Correct, and it wasn't what I was expecting, at all. The apprentice claims, and I quote, that Professor Maltori wished to reclaim what is rightfully the property of the Academy, and by extension, the property of the Crown. Thalmin's features began shifting yet again at that revelation. A dour severity took over, as the Lupinor's eyes began to dilate with a look of genuine unease.
Emma, he began with a throaty breath, what exactly did your people put inside of that box?
Well, the apprentice called it a minor shard of impart. She said,
Stop. Did you just say a minor shard of impart?
Thalmin interjected, with a solid guttural bark. Yeah, I did. So after that, she said,
Why did your people feel the need to put a planar-level gifted artifact into your personal belongings?
The Lupinor prince shot back, with a series of loud, ear-shattering barks, each one louder than the next, which for a split second managed to surprise and overwhelm the Eevee's automatic volume adjustments. I have an answer for that. I managed out with a sheepish one. I really do, but you gotta give me a sec.
Don't think you can just grapple away from your problems, Emma.
No. I'm not going anywhere. I just need to check something real quick, alright? With a look of utter confusion from Thalmin, I switched off my external mic, turning to the Eevee as I addressed it with little room for patience. So, schematics of the ECS. What did you find there, Eevee? The minor shard of impart corresponds to a component designated as the AMD-002B Low Bandwidth Exo-Reality Unidirectional Narrowband Pulsator, AMD-002L Bionup, colloquially known within the Exocom department as the Transdimensional Transceiver. That doesn't sound really Nexian to me. AMD-002B being short for Anomalous Material Derived Object, Cadet Booker, the Eevee quickly interjected, providing me with a neat little correction that could have just been stated outright. Wait, O2? I'm assuming this was the second crystal of its kind to be sent to the IAS, the one they kept talking about in D-Wing? Correct, Cadet Booker. I thought they said the thing's power source went kaput ages ago. How did they... Warning, 10 successive attempts at physical confrontation detected.
Emma?
Thalmin's voice overrid the conversation happening inside of the suit. His hands were currently placed on either side of my shoulders as he was shaking me, or at least attempting to, for good measure.
Emma, are you alright?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You completely froze for a solid minute there. I was getting worried.
Thalmin paused, his expression shifting from concern to a patiently questioning one.
So, you're sure you're alright?
Yeah, I just needed some time to find an answer.
Alright, good. So, you found an answer then?
Yep.
Alright then. Why?
I let out a nervous sigh, uncertain of what it was the big-brained white coats at home had gotten me into. Because some of our scientists and engineers were trying to construct a device that allows for communication between different realities. Now, I wasn't exactly briefed on the specifics, since I had a lot of other things to worry about during training. But long story short, we kind of just retrofitted the magic crystal to send what we wanted to send, instead of what it was intended to send. Thalman's eyes looked like they were about to pop right out of his head, as I could practically feel him fuming through all the layers of metal, composites, and nanoweave.
You actively, knowingly, and willingly repurposed a Nexian gift?
I mean, the apprentice said she also detected that it had been modified in a sense, so would that fit the bill for repurposing, or...
You actually desecrated a Nexian gift?
Hold on just one sec, I said sheepishly yet again, as I went through the motions of pinging the Evie for more details. Evie, anything to say about the whole modification and desecration thing? The component in question was designated as an anomalous material-derived object, Cadet Booker. The designation of 002 categorizes this as the second of the Nexian objects sent through the portal to the IAS. The sub-designation of B categorizes this object as having been deconstructed into two discrete components, namely AMD-002A and AMD-002B. So that's what they were talking about when they said they had an easy solution to the issue of entanglement. They literally just decided to break the damn thing in half. I can't even be fucking mad, to be honest with you. I began laughing, half because of the stress, and half because of the ridiculousness of it all. That's fucking brilliant. I finally turned back to Thalmin, who seemed to be still a bit wary of my sudden introspective escapades, but was willing to go along with it. I instinctively reached my arm behind my back in an attempt to scratch the back of my neck, but was once again met with the unyielding presence of the armor being in the way. I mean, if your definition of desecration involves stuff like breaking the crystal in half, then I guess we might have done it. Thalman's mouth hung agape at that answer, as not a single sound escaped his gaping maw. I know it sounds insane, but it was necessary in order to...
Emma.
Thalman stopped me in my tracks by what could only be described as a cross between a dulcet growl and a concerned whimper.
Do your people have a death wish?
I mean, it's a gift, and they even said it as such. We even reiterated it. It was a gift that had a practical and utilitarian purpose, to act as a tool to facilitate communication between realities. Besides, they're designed to go kaput after a while, right? So what's the harm of just repurposing one that's already dead?
It's because you weren't supposed to. Its purpose is to serve as a tool for communication, yes, but after its utility is gone, what instead remains is its symbolic significance. I think Thacia will be better at coming up with a concise explanation of this. What I do know is that these gifts are meant to be cherished as a sign of mutual respect. What gave your people the impression that this was even a good idea to begin with? The portal people, as we knew them at the time, emphasized that they wanted us to keep exploring all avenues to reach them. They were also incredibly vague about what they expected from us. Now, we didn't really have a lot of options, so I think our guys kind of assumed that the crystals might have been part of that whole process to reach the other side, so we just went at it. I shrugged. The natural evolution of this is the repurposing of that project for our homegrown exocom project. The portal people?
Thalman began, breathing in and out rapidly, before he started to cackle, his whole chest heaving up and down in a series of uncontrolled laughs.
The portal people, upon first signs of discourse, encouraged new realms to further expand on their mana-based practices. When they said you were supposed to explore every possibility to reach them, they meant everything but the desecration of a planar-level artifact, intended as a gift.
The Lupinor paused, taking a moment to regain his footing, as he leaned against one of the terrace's many ornate statues.
I don't know whether to be terrified for your people for having committed this brazen act of defiance, or completely ecstatic by this flagrant disregard from adjacent realms' stately decorum.
His eyes pierced straight through those two lenses and right into my soul.
Can you just answer me one thing, Emma?
Go for it.
Why did your realm assume that it would be a good idea to try using a minor shard of impart for your own machinations?
I tried to come up with an answer. I really did, but only one thing came to mind. An answer that was sort of a non-answer, but was a good one all the same. It's because we've had a long history of tricking much smaller rocks into thinking. I think our scientists just assume that tricking a much bigger, fancier magic rock into talking for us wouldn't be that big of a leap from that time-honored tradition. My answer seemed to have hit harder than expected, as the Lupador mercenary prince's face looked as if he just logged out of this conversation. I was left there with a completely broken prince on a completely empty terrace with the wind starting to pick right up. Looking up, I saw rain clouds starting to form, as it was clear any open-air spaces were probably going to be soaked pretty soon. Come on, let's head on inside. Theseus about due to come back, right? The Transgration Academy for the Magical Arts. Hallway connecting the castle to the medical wing. Local time, 17:25 hours. It had been 3 full hours since Thesia had entered the medical wing to conduct her misdirection mission. 3 full hours of what I could only imagine was an endless onslaught of vapid conversation points that would have all but fried my brain into a goopy mess of oblique. I'd expected our bird princess to return with a dead look in her eyes, or worse, as a completely reprogrammed zombie, having been subsumed back into the Nexian ways. Reality, however, couldn't be further from the truth, as Thesia arrived with the same determined gaze she'd given us when she'd left. In fact, there wasn't even an ounce of fatigue behind those sharp copper eyes. Alert! Localized surge of mana radiation detected. 275% above background radiation levels. She even managed to pull up the privacy screen without breaking a sweat. Though, to be fair, I wasn't really sure how difficult those were to get set up. This is most certainly a welcome surprise, Thesia began, slowly but surely shedding that haughty, proper cadence, and entering into that earnest tone of voice that honestly felt more at home with the person she was. I'm glad to see both of you are well. The Avenor took a moment to pause as she noted Thowin's expressions. This seemed to be enough for Thesia to gather that something else had recently developed. Emma, could you please tell me what exactly happened with the apprentice? The princess spoke, with a preemptively timed, exasperated sigh. Dragon's Heart Tower, Level 23, Residence 30, Living Room. Local time, 17:55 hours. It was probably a good thing that Thamin was the first person I talked to about the true nature of the ECS, because it was clear that Thesia had a lot more to say, but was keeping her side of things deathly silent until we finally returned to the dorm. It was clear she was using the commute time for all it was worth, as those eyes never once let up in their intensity throughout the entirety of our walk back. It was only after the doors to the dorm had closed did she finally relent, letting out a sigh as she turned towards me, then Thaumin, before gesturing for the both of us to take our respective seats on the living room couch. And that's all you've told her about the significance of the Shard of Impart? Thesia kicked things off by directly addressing Thaumin.
Yes, you must forgive me, Princess. I wasn't one to regularly frequent the Havenbrockian Ministry of Adjacency. It was more my sister's prerogative, as I was training for the ranks of the military, before finally being singled out for the academy. The Lupanor Prince shrugged. That's quite all right, Thesia managed out politely. I'll take things from here. The princess now turned towards me, as those avian eyes once more pierced straight through my opaque lenses. Emma, what your realm has done is something that few would ever think to do, much less dare to act upon.
Stately decorum gives as less of a transference of ownership, but rather a transference of ownership with caveats, namely that the item in question be undefiled and is to be in the same condition it was received. It is a matter of courtesy and a test of due diligence. The modification of a gift not only violates stately decorum, but it also is a taboo that harkens back to the Great War. Beyond this, the very nature of it being one of the scant few magical artifacts capable of planar-level magic is yet another strike against your favour in the eyes of the Nexus. Thacia laid it all out for me, as it was clear she wasn't done with just that topical explanation. I honestly expected nothing less from her. The minor shard of impart is one of the fundamental cornerstones which underpins the status communicata, the forum of inter-realm diplomacy that ties all realms to the Nexus. During the war, these shards were purposely shattered as a sign of rebellion against the Nexus. Legends say that its shattered remains were repurposed into a new system of status communicata, one that doesn't rely on the Nexus as its focal point. Though many question whether or not this venture was successful, the act of destroying a minor shard of impart has become synonymous with open discontent or outright rebellion. Now, since Earthrealm is still considered a new realm, I am certain this offence will not be considered in the same light. I believe what Professor Maltori is truly concerned about is what you claim to be, a means of repurposing the Shard of Impart for your own purposes. The princess paused, as the wave of just everything was already starting to hit me hard. Everything made so much more sense now that she had put things into perspective, and provided me with that crucial historical precedence that changed everything. Emma, do you realize that if your artifice works, it will be analogous to the legendary counter to the status communicata? It will be providing a principle that has all but been shrouded by the sands of time. I believe this is why Professor Maltori has taken possession of your artifice, Emma. It's not just for the purpose of saving face from the embarrassment you inflicted on him during orientation. It's also not simply because it's an offence against the stately decorum. I believe that one of the major instigating factors is in fact the destruction, modification and repurposing of your realm's minor shard of impart, Thacia stated concisely, causing both Thalmin and myself to turn towards each other with a look of outright disbelief. Fuck, this is becoming way more intense than I thought. I paused before leaning in closer. How do you know so much about this whole thing anyways, Thacia? Knowledge has always been one of the few weapons in my arsenal, to ward off against the others within my court. They would prefer I was no longer a nuisance and a blight on the realm. Rather than pursuing potential mates, sharpening my talons or my blade, or honing in my web of connections, I instead focus also on the accumulation of every scrap of knowledge I can muster. You will be surprised how certain esoteric bits of knowledge can be used to one's advantage against many a royal and noble. Thacia spoke in coldly, and in no uncertain terms, before turning to face Thalmin. No offence was made to your endeavours of sharpening your claw and blade, of course, Thalmin. I was merely providing my side of the story.
No offence taken, Princess. You know how things are in Havenbrock realm. It's far less intense, and far more casual than the core life in Aetheron realm.
I took a few moments just to breathe after that entire spiel, as Thacia and Thalmin's gazes now landed on me. So, I do have a few questions about this minor shard of impart business. Go on, Emma, Thacia chirped affirmatively. Why can't your realms just make their own? I asked bluntly, as a part of my memory quickly harkened back to that conversation with Sorasar. Maybe this was the result of the same issue. 2 primary reasons. 1, lack of expertise. 2, a lack of significant enough levels of mana to allow for the propagation of the crystals used to make the minor shard of impart. You must understand, Emma, the minor shard of impart is a truly planar-level artifact. Not just an artifice, but an artifact. It isn't so much created as it is birthed from the earth itself. This is the result of a combination of geology and mana that can only be found here in the Nexus. This is why the Nexus gifts these shards annually, as the ambient environmental mana of adjacent realms are incapable of sustaining its use. The less mana a realm has, the more shards are sent to resupply that adjacent realm, as the internal mana stores of these shards of impart deplete quicker the less ambient mana a realm has. Which begs the question, how are your people so certain that this artifice will even work? By what means are you assuming you can simply break a minor shard of impart in half in order to communicate back to your realm?
Yeah, didn't you say Earthrealm was a manaless realm, Emma?
Thalmin quickly added. It was at this point that I turned to the Eevee, who had already conveniently pulled up a diagram of the ECS, particularly of its inaction. I went to work reading this simplified diagram before I finally got it. My eyes grew wide as I saw just what the Whitecoats at home had concocted, and to say that I was beyond ecstatic at what the science boys had come up with would be nothing short of an understatement. Simple, Princess, I started, as I grinned wildly underneath my helmet. We're just using the same rules you just outlined. Thasia's face went completely blank for a moment, as something very quickly clicked in her head, leading to two eyes which shot back a look of complete and utter disbelief. You're not implying that... Oh, yes I am, I interjected, with a snigger growing ever more prominent. We're in the Nexus, are we not? The MREDD has already proven a simple principle, that our artificers are capable of shoving mana from one area to another, hence why my tent is mana-free. It's not that hard to consider the possibility of pushing mana from the ambient air, already rich in it, back into a small enclosed space. And you said it yourself, the crystals are only capable of growing naturally here in the Nexus, due to the sheer concentration of mana here. The Exo-Reality Communication Suite has a dedicated series of mana extraction chambers, designed expressly for the concentration of mana back into the chamber with the crystal. I'm assuming that's enough to make it work, right? Thalmin's face was all but glowing with complete and utter excitement, as he turned to Thasia, as if to gauge her reactions to my small little explanation. The Avenor was expectedly completely floored. As simple as that is, this actually might work, she admitted with a breathless sigh.
There's something about you Earthrealmers that just keeps putting a smile on my face, Emma.
Thalmin panted back with an excitable grin, punching the side of my armor with a third fist, as I could only look back with a look of genuine giddiness.
How about we take tonight to leave for a small feast in the grand dining hall? The apprentice will be talking to Professor Maltori tonight, won't she? I'm certain the professor will summon you sometime in the morning. So how about we spend tonight feasting away, in preparation for what's to come tomorrow?
I turned my head reluctantly towards Thasia, as if waiting for her go-ahead. This is a prudent course of action, Thasia nodded once. It is important to keep appearances. Public social gatherings are but an aspect of this. It was with this majority vote that I reluctantly agreed with a heavy sigh. It's not like I'll be able to eat anything, but sure. It'll get my mind off of things until tomorrow morning, I guess. 5 hours later. Dragon's Heart Tower, Level 23, Residence 30. Local time, 23:55 hours. The dinner was just about what I'd expected from Nexus Fare. Fancy, overplanned, and seemingly endless. When I thought they'd just about ended dinner service, another platter came out, as if to taunt me, and my inability to consume those tasty morsels. I don't think I've ever spent more than an hour at a dinner before, let alone 5. By the end of it, I felt like I'd been put through a gauntlet. Though having 5 hours of downtime just to talk with both Thasia and Thalmin was honestly kind of nice. It was certainly something I didn't know I needed, but I was happy enough to have gone along with. Sort of like when your friends invite you to do something you didn't want, but it ended up being better than you thought. Though I would be lying if I didn't say I was more than glad to be out of there, as we turned the corner towards our dorm. Except instead of an empty hallway, I was met with a lone golem, standing patiently in front of the door. My heart suddenly sank right into my gut as I realized what this was all about.
Emma Booker, Professor Maltori has approved your request. The professor sees fit that you meet him immediately. Please, follow me.
The golem spoke with a guttural, bassy voice, as if the stones inside his form were vibrating in order to generate that facsimile of a voice. I turned back to face Thacia and Thalmin, who looked on at me with genuine concern. "It'll be all right," I managed back with a forced smile. "I'll be back before you know it. Promise you won't blow anything up while I'm gone, all right?" I made one last attempt at diffusing the tense scene, with a small infusion of humour. Thalmin responded with a nervous smile. Thacia took it a step further by gripping my hand tight and maintaining a steady gaze of determination, as both of our eyes locked for what felt like longer than just a few seconds. "Remember what I told you over dinner. Calm is the ally of the victor. Panic is the flatterer of the defeated." I responded with a small squeeze from my gloved hands, feeling the avian's gaze of determination flowing through me, before carefully untangling my hand from her own. "Trust me, it'll be fine." "I will count that as a promise, Emma. Know that knights do not break their word." It was with those few parting words that I finally stepped away from the group, trailing behind the golem, as my course was now set to see this whole thing through.